Today I'm going to tell a story of a comic legend who died well before his time, sadly. He was a child of the 70s. He grew to popularity at a very young age, like the Coreys, whom he once partied with. He met a demise at a fairly young age, dying at 25. In 1972, he was the star of what would be considered the most popular joke, possibly of all time. For boys between the ages of 6 and 13, Johnny Fucker Faster was a legend. But unfortunately, Johnny's life came to a sad end after huffing paint in a dismal Hollywood slum. Hawaii would have been better. And shooting up something he thought was heroin. Turned out it was rat poison. Because that's the kind of people he was living with. It's the kind of life he was living. But let's go back to the heyday of Johnny Fucker Faster. His mother, Nancy Fucker Faster, had a vigorous sex life with her husband, Bob Fucker Faster, who had to live up to his name, and it was a tough thing living up to the name. It was something that most men would shrink of. Some of his family hadn't been so lucky. They had kind of went the way of Johnny, so it ran in the family. But Bob persevered. He had a simple job. He worked as a fabricator. He came home every night, and he would bang his wife vigorously, and she would say, Bob Fucker Faster, and he would be motivated by that. And Johnny, hearing this, he had a vigorous, growing up, he had a vigorous sex life at a young age, and he got into sex at a very young age, triggering, of course, the joke. And the other star of the joke, Susie Fucker Faster, little Susie, I'm sorry, I misspoke. Little Susie, the other star of the joke, she actually went on to become a very big-time porn producer and did quite well after having a long career in porn, of course. But so her story may be tragic in other ways, but not nearly as bad as Johnny. And I could get into that, but it's only a 5-minute set. But I gotta say, Bob and Nancy, Susie, what was the name of the mom again? I can't remember. They were a healthy, 70s couple, which spawned the joke, which originated in actually 1968, and catapulted the young 8-year-old Johnny to stardom, as well as his mother and Susie as lesser characters. But as with a lot of young stars, it was a fleeting stardom, and things started to go bad for Johnny at about 13. He kept trying to reproduce the joke. He came up with other catchphrases. You know, Johnny fucks a lot. Johnny Dixman. But it never really stuck. He had to always go back to his old name, Johnny Fucker Faster, and it really only lended itself to one joke. And he really couldn't break out of the mold. It was a tough thing for him. So for Johnny, the rest of his life was sort of a steady shitstorm, catapulting him towards, at 18, he was arrested for statutory rape for having sex with his 15-year-old girlfriend at the time, but he was having sex with several girls because he'd never been a one-girl guy. I mean, he was Johnny Fucker Faster. And, and that's what he would get drunk and he would say that a lot. Nobody really liked him, but people hung around with him more because of his status. I mean, it was a very popular joke for kids growing up. And, for some jokes, for some kids, it was the first time they ever even heard the F word. And it had to be put into a last name just so it could be worked in, but it made it even funnier the first time you heard the F word when it was combined with faster, and of course little Susie played her part, albeit somewhat sad in another way. I mean, they say her vagina looked like a kite flying in the wind with no string attached towards the end. She was always a little person, but she had a big ass vagina after her porn career. So sadly, it ended one night. After he got out of a brief prison stint, which he really didn't deserve. The girls came after him. He was Johnny Fucker Faster, but they were young, and he always liked girls a little younger than him. But he got out in his 20s. He hooked up with some bad characters, some bad women who were into some hard drugs, and it just led sort of to a John Belushi-like fate. Like we all heard the story. No need to go into it. But this is my ode to you, Johnny Fucker Faster. Rest in peace. His candle burned out long before his legend ever did.